Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good day, depending on where you're watching this from. I was ideally going to be doing this recording on Facebook, but obviously, because we live in an era where technological issues are not inevitable sometimes, I'm going to do this live here. And then, of course, it's something that I know you guys will be benefiting from. So today, if you are new here, you will know that if you're new here, you will not be aware of this. But if you're not new here, you will know that I've been running a 7-day challenge. And this challenge has basically been to enable us or to invite us into my journey where I've been trying every single day to encourage you guys to do at least 5,000 steps. So you do like every so often, every day, you will be able to kind of, in a way, bring in your step up every single day because we know exercise plays a very important role when it comes to our well being, when it comes to our mental and emotional well being, physical well-being as well. So I have been trying to come every single day in the evenings onto Facebook Live, and then I hold a live session with guys and then try to explain different topics on us every single day. If you're new here, I will begin by introducing myself because I've realized a few people are kind of in a way finding us. A few people are again joining us, joining the tribe. So they are subscribing and becoming part of the tribe. Thank you so much for our recent subscribers, for the long term subscribers, those who have been with us for a long time. We really appreciate that. So, for those of you who are new, my name is Claire. I am a registered nutritionist. I teach on food courses in a higher education institution in the United Kingdom, and it's my great privilege to kind of, in a way, share my knowledge that I've gained over years with you guys. I am so passionate about the human body because I strongly believe that God has given us this body as a mandate for us to be able to exist in healthy bodies, and these healthy bodies will enable us to be able to carry out the purpose to which we are alive and kicking. So we have been doing this so far. This is day number 4. Day 1, we looked at, I just gave my story. I really wanted to come online and talk about the challenge and things like that. Obviously, I ended up having a few issues, but then I just ended up saying, why not? I'm just going to talk about my story. And then I ended up sharing with you guys my story. And thank you so much to everyone that has reached out to tell me how that story has motivated you, how it has encouraged you even to begin your own journey. I had a very another interesting message this morning that was like really heartwarming of somebody was telling me like they are now decided instead of doing 5,000 steps a day, no matter how much time it takes them, for them, they've decided they are actually doing 5 kilometers in less than 20 minutes. That's amazing. I haven't done that myself since I started running, and I don't know if I'm yet there yet, but one day, hopefully, who knows, I might come running after you. So watch over. Just be running as you look after your over your shoulder because I might be catching up with you very soon. I've had also other people telling me how they've started to change their diets around, how they've begun to kind of, in a way, get a little bit more better in terms of how they look after their health, which is something that is encouraging and is motivating. And of course, the passion of my heart is to see lives transformed. And as I said on Monday, I'm not going after the world because, of course, the world is too big. 8 billion people is massive number of people, but I'm after one person at a time. If you make an impact to one person, if you change one life, that life will change another life, and another life will change another life, and that can actually be the source or the genesis of of a revolution and lives being changed at the end of the day. And then day 2, I talked about calories. I mentioned how not all calories are the same. So I mentioned, for example, you can decide to snack on things like cookies, which will have a higher calorific load, versus you can still snack on things like cucumbers, which are just basically water. And that gives you that leverage to be able to get more from vegetables. And of course, you get as well the health benefits from that. And then yesterday, I spoke about hydration. If you remember, if you're online, I came along with my bottle and I explained to you how I have been trying to encourage myself to drink water, how I've been using these guys so much to kind of, in a way, be like a pointer for me. have a little bit sip, and just to remind me constantly to be able to drink water. So we talked about hydration, and I remember saying yesterday it's not about just water that makes you hydrated, but you can't be hydrated simply from being able to consume kind of in a way also like other fluids at the end of the day. And so today I have a very different topic, something slightly different that I'm going to be chatting with you, that I'm going to be discussing with you. If you are joining us online, feel free to come to participate. Feel free to drop in the chat, say hello in the chat, let us know that you are here, encourage us by commenting on some of the things that we'll be talking about today. So, what is the topic of today? The topic of today is mindfulness when it comes to eating. I'll be talking about mindful eating, and I have a handout, which is something that I will be posting over in the Facebook group at some point later on. So, for those guys that are following on Facebook, can be able to read a little bit more around these, but I'll try as much as I can as well to catch up with the information that I need so that at the end of the day, I can be able, I've seen you, lovely one, I can be able to kind of in a way encourage again other people are well to follow as well. So today, as I mentioned, we will be looking at mindful eating. If you've ever participated in mindfulness, what comes to your mind? People talk about mindfulness in different ways. Some talk about mindfulness by, I don't know, disconnecting, wherever that they do. But when we're thinking about mindful eating, what does that really come to your mind? If you are online, you can chat, you can drop it in the chat and just say, what do you think is mindful eating? So we can do a little bit of interactions. And I'll give you 1 or 2 seconds, just kind of in a way to type what you think can be mindful eating for you, or what do you think yourself is mindful eating. Mindful eating obviously is not a diet. Is not somewhere that somebody will tell you, okay, you are on a diet because you're participating mindful eating. Mindful eating does not include menus, so it's not something that you will say, well, that's a powerful one. Minding what you eat, amazing, lovely. I love that. Thank you so much, sis. And then it's literally is being mindful, as the name suggests, isn't it? Being mindful of what you're eating and when you're eating. When you're trying to eat, you're kind of in a way understanding and kind of in a way minding your bites. You know, most of us go to movies, maybe most of us or some of us go to movies. When you go to movie nights, you just find yourself, you keep on munching, you keep on eating. You're not even thinking about the calories that you're eating. And sometimes when you go to those movie places, they have these really big jars and tubs of popcorns that they are selling. And what you just do, because your mind is concentrated on watching the movie, your mind is concentrated on doing whatever that you're feeling like you're doing. You just keep on going and you're eating and you're eating and you're not even thinking, hang on a minute, what am I doing? How many calories am I eating? How many am I really biting this food enough to be able to allow it to break down so that at the end of the day I can be able to say I've managed to digest my food properly. The other thing, have you ever been out, maybe somebody has invited you for dinner, or you are eating together as a family, and then somebody's just constantly scrolling. It does feel like, okay, or maybe you're just even out with a date with a friend, and it's just like, they are on Instagram. You've ever realized Instagram has no bottom, so you cannot get to the end and say, well, I've scrolled to the end, I'll come back tomorrow. The moment you refresh it, there are new feeds, new stories to catch your attention, and you're back to Instagram, and you're forgetting we actually had a date, we actually were talking to somebody. And it's become kind of in a way, we are a society where we don't really think much about the things that we do. We don't really think much about, particularly when we eat. And when we eat without thinking really what we're eating and how we're eating and engaging with ourselves when we are eating, one of the biggest problems that we end up with is you are not able to feel when you start to feel full. And so it gets to a point you can actually end up overeating simply because when your hunger has disappeared, your mind is so engaged that you are kind of in a way not really sensing your body telling you, hey, we've had enough, stop. So you kind of, in a way, your senses are in a way like dampened. Your senses are not active. Your senses are not functioning enough. And then at the end of the day, what is happening is that you are constantly pumping yourself, and you can end up in a way whereby you end up with this guilty eating. You start judging yourselves. You can end up starting to feel like, oh my gosh, I've eaten too much. Now I need to get rid of it. And that can actually also result in troubles and things like as well. It's not basic, and I don't want to make it sound so trivial, but sometimes we can end up with things like eating disorders because you're feeling like I've eaten too much and now I'm going to be big, I'm going to be fat, I'm going to be all those things that begin to speak to your mind. And then you want to look for a way of getting rid of the food. And then once you do that, you get to a point you can become trapped in a cycle, isn't it? It does feel like today I have eaten, and then tomorrow I'm getting rid of it, and then the other day, and then at the end of the day, you are not able to even have a stable weight at the end of it all. And one of the other things that mindless eating actually does, it kind of in a way makes you not to be able to actually feel the flavor, feel the enjoyment and the satisfaction of the food. And I don't know if you've ever been that kind of a person that you decide and say, today, when I'm eating, I'm going to switch off my TV, because that's another source of disruptions, that you're sitting distractions. You're sitting down, you're watching news, and you're eating your dinner. And the news is really feeding you with all the negatives. It's telling you how there's been a war, how there's been a fight, how somebody has been killed, how this and this. Or maybe you're watching even something nice. You're watching your soap, you're watching people like living their lives, but because you're kind of in a way just in there, you're glued onto the TV, you're not in any way allowing your cues to be in touch and in get to the point that you kind of start to feel, I am full and I can enjoy my food. I've enjoyed my food at the end of the day. So when you think about mindless eating, of course, mindlessly eating at eating when you're bored, how many of us have used food as pacifiers? When you're feeling like, I'm really, really bored today, the first thing you do, reach out for your fridge. Or maybe if you're happy, how many of us reward ourselves with food? You can put an emoji in the chat just to show if you're kind of like me, that maybe you reward yourself at the end of the day. You've done something great and you're feeling like, let me just get myself a chocolate, engage in a chocolate, or engage in something that in kind of in a way using food as a reward mechanism. When you are anxious as well, when you are happy, I've already mentioned that. Or when you can kind of in a way you're just feeling like, like particularly at this stage, honestly, there is so much negativity around that you sit down and you start to regurgitate and reflect on that. You can actually get disrupted in that, distracted in all those things, just thinking and thinking about the negative. You don't even need to switch on your TV, just need to look at your phone. And phones, even nowadays, give us those news feeds, isn't it? You're scrolling your phone and it's just telling you, you know what, this has happened, so and so has been killed, so and so has been. And then at the end of the day, it kind of in a way can cause your mind to become kind of in a way in fearful mode. And that can actually make you to end up with mindless eating. Of course, also some people just eat because food exists, isn't it? Have you ever been to a buffet? You've been to a restaurant and then you realize that it's eat all as you can, isn't it? And you're paying for it, and you start to say like, how can I just have like only one plate when actually I can eat as much as I can? Or maybe you've been to a party and you've been invited to this party and your friends have cooked so much food, or you are in a wedding and your friends have just like put a banquet, and you're like, oh my god, there's all this food, I don't have to labor, work hard or things like that. So at the end of the day, you get to a point you're just eating and forgetting that there are consequences when you're eating. And so let's talk a little bit about mindful eating. There are five basic S's that I would like you to remember from today when we come to this mindful eating. If you forget anything that I've talked about tonight, these five S's will be really, really important. So next time you're eating, next time you go out for a movie, before you start eating your popcorn and enjoying it, first thing, just sit down A lot of us are in a society where every time you just find yourself, you're kind of moving. Of course, I'm asking you now to do the steps and to move and to move and to move. That you're finding sometimes I've found people on the trains or on the go, and they're eating their sandwiches as they go. There's nothing wrong with eating on the go. But then when you're doing that, you're not allowing yourself the concentration to allow your mind, to allow yourself to see that food, to feel that food, to sense that food, engaging all your senses. The sense of touch, when you start to touch the food, you can see the texture of it, you can see the color, you can see you can smell the food, you can taste the food, you can feel it. And once you do that, in a way, it helps you to get to a point that you are like, I can really start to break down those flavors. I can feel the profiling of the flavors. I can feel the saltiness, the sweetness, everything all combined. So sit down when you're having your food. Don't try to go eating on the go. If you want to put your steps through, you want to do your step count, that's what I'm asking you guys to do this week. Do it after you've eaten or before you've eaten, but not during your meal. The other thing that can be very helpful is when you're eating, try to chew slowly. Take a minute to bite and bite and bite. And somebody was saying sometimes you can start to count as you're eating your food, count the number of bites you're biting before you swallow. Because if you're kind of in a way just eating and chewing and chewing and chewing, and you're talking and you're doing everything, that person, this, one, you're not even sensing what you're eating and you're not even enjoying what you're eating. But on top of that, it will get to a point whereby you can't even feel when you are full. So it gets to a point as well, you're kind of disrupting the whole idea behind eating. So when you start to chew slowly, you're allowing yourself to break the food into smaller particles. And we know, if you've ever done physics, smaller particles have a larger surface area to volume ratio, and that allows, if it's things like carbohydrate, we know that the digestion of carbohydrates begins with the mouth because there is the saliva, and the saliva contains what is called amylase enzyme. These enzyme can begin to break down some of the amylose, and amylose and amylopectin are just sugars that are found in starch, which is carbohydrate, and that breakdown begins from the mouth. So by the time you're kind of chewing and giving yourself that slow eating and slow chewing, you are allowing that surface area to be enhanced so that the saliva, these enzymes in the saliva can actually coat around, can begin even their work, and they can begin starting to break down your food. And then so that when it forms a nice bolus that can move nicely through the throat, and you can swallow your food very peacefully, but of course also allow it to break down very well. The other thing also you need to remember, I told you I'm giving you 5 S's today, is savor. Take a mindful time to bite your food. Think about the smell. And I want you to do like an exercise. If you have any food around you, around your house, it could be a bar of chocolate, it could be ugali, it could be wherever it is. Just take a little piece of it, and when you take the piece of that food that you have, and then begin to think about the smell, so you can smell the food. If it's something that you've cooked, pilau, rice, or whatever, start to smell it and think like, how does it even smell? I can smell some popcorn kind of a smell there. And then start to think about, apart from the smelling, how does it taste? When I'm eating it, does it taste salty? Does it taste sugary? And just allow your mind to begin to pick up those profiling, to begin to kind of communicate with yourself, to tell you like the food you're eating is too salty. If it's too salty, there are dangers. If you're eating too much salt, that can actually raise and increase your risks of things like high blood pressure. If you're eating food that is too sugary, that increases your risk of other diseases as well. You can end up as well, of course, gaining weight because that's energy. We talked about how carbohydrate is a good way. If you increase its consumption, of course, beyond what you need, it can easily be stored in the body. The other thing to also think about with this mindful thinking, the S number 4, is simplify your regime. I've taught you guys and I've talked to you guys about the different types of food when you're looking at your plate, kind of in a way what you need to fill up on your plate, what you fill up in terms of the fruits and vegetables. So when you're putting everything on the plate, try to put the healthy food, but also in your house, when you're having the food around your house, try to ensure that all these kind of energy dense foods, cookies, crisps, whatever, if you can, sweep them away from your house so that at the end of the day there are no disruptions. But of course, I mentioned yesterday moderation. You can snack in moderation and things like that. Put them away in the cupboards, away from where you easily can see them. So when you're walking into the house, like maybe you're from work and you're so tired, you're hungry, and you really, really need a snack before dinner time, when you have all the healthy foods like on your surface, you can easily see them. So you have on your counter bananas, you have apples, you have those fruits and vegetables around. You will easily, psychologically, your mind will go straight onto a banana, straight onto an apple. By the time you're realizing, oh, I had a bag of crisps, you've already had something, and you might end up as well just waiting before you eat your dinner. And of course, the other thing, the last one is smile. Who knew that when you are eating mindfully, you need to smile? Because what the smiling does, it kind of in a way gives you that gap in between to start to feel satisfied. And you can do it now if you've taken like a cookie or a crisp or whatever you have and you wanted to try this with yourself. Just take a minute and just smile over that food. So, to recap the things that I've talked about, sit down, don't eat when you're standing, slowly chew your food, savor all the tastes, mindfully bite them, smell the taste, and notice each spoon as you go along. And please do try to switch off things like televisions, mobile phones, etc., so that they're not distracting you as you're eating or disrupting you, sorry, as you're eating your dinner. I've also mentioned try to simplify. So at the end of the day, you're putting all the healthy foods closer in convenient places on the counters, in places where it's very easy for you to be able to see them. And of course, having that gap in between. So you are kind of the current bite and the next bite, just smiling in between to give yourself that opportunity to be able to take a breath and allow yourself to enjoy the food as you go along. So I want to give you some exercise so that at the end of the day you can do this by yourself when you have your time by yourself. This one of the things that I want you to do is just think about 8 things with this exercise. So you might want to write if you are taking some notes, or if you are listening, maybe you might want to rewatch this so that you can remember. When you are eating next time, mindfully pick. So choose a food or a fruit, nuts, whatever, anything that you're thinking about. And today I want you to try and practice mindful eating healthily. So instead of picking up like a chocolate or chocolate bar or crisp or whatever, you can pick, let's say, nuts, or you can pick fruit, so you can pick an orange slice, or even if you want to still keep up with your chocolate. And then once you've done that, what I want you to do is look closely at the food. So you can do this as I'm talking to you, as you're watching this. And as you're looking at your food, begin to describe it to yourself. If you have a bar of chocolate, or if you have an apple, or I have here some popcorns, I'll start to describe them. They look a little bit like they've undergone some caramelization. So there's some brown color coming around. They are white, they are popped up. It was initially a kernel, but now it's no longer, it's popped out. And then begin to describe that food for yourself. And as you're describing, what is the shape, what is the color, and then smell the food. If it's a chocolate bar, does it smell like chocolatey? Does it smell like a milk chocolate, a white chocolate, dark chocolate? And then once you do that, you will start to begin to realize that actually the smell does impact you. Does it in any way affect anything? Does it remind you of anything? When I eat these, when I smell the popcorn, it reminds me those days back home when one of the evenings we'll have these times together as a family, and kind of in a way we'll just have those moments to snack sometimes on things like popcorns. It reminds me of the times when I've lived with my sisters, and at some point that you just kind of, in a way, are thinking like, oh, we're gonna go out for work. And then as you're walking along the street, you find these like street food, and then you're getting yourself a packet of popcorn and you're eating as you're chatting. Does it bring any memories of your childhood? If, for example, you have like, let's say, a bowl of crisp chips, for example, it kind of reminds me. It reminds me of my childhood. It reminds me of my mom when she was still alive, when she really enjoyed making, like she will do this for her family, and then we will sit down and she will be chatting to us and telling us about life and teaching us all these different things. And it makes me, of course, miss her this moment and this time. And then once you're doing that, the other thing is try to truly test the food. Do you like it? Do you like the texture? Do you like the spices? If it's something you're having that is very spicy, do you love it? Do you love it hot? Do you love it not so hot? Is it mild? Do you like the flavor? I recently started to have, like, once in a while, a flavored coffee, and I got these chocolates and coconuts flavored coffee. And when I make it kind of reminds me of life in Kenya at the coast, where there's these fresh coconuts and you can just kind of, in a way, get one very fresh one, and then you're kind of digging and getting that fresh water, and then you start to drink, and how it kind of, in a way, really tastes nice, but it's also quenching of the thirst. And then also begin to notice thoughts and feelings. Pay attention to whatever emotions and thoughts that come to mind when I'm eating maybe these popcorn. The thoughts that are coming to my mind is, maybe I'm starting to feel like, I really want to have a chat with my siblings. I want to have a chat with my mom, but I can't. She's not here anymore. And of course, does it make you feel sad? Does it make you feel happy? What kind of feelings does it evoke as you're beginning to think about that food? And then once you've done that, begin to slowly chew the food. As you're slowly chewing the food, begin to mind to kind of, in a way, think about the texture. Is it crumbly? Does it adhere to your mouth? Is it sticking to your teeth? Is it easy to break down the food you're eating, or is it difficult for you to break down? And then begin to follow it down to your throat. Begin to follow it down, as I mentioned, as it makes the bolus and it starts to roll down into your throat. Try to follow it. Try to think about it like it's very hot in the UK at the moment. And if I was to have a glass of water, I start to think about how it goes down and how it brings to an end that thirst and that quenches the thirst. And then keep on practicing it. Mindful eating is not something that you will do it one day and you say, well, I have become a professor of mindfulness. You'll always find a little bit much more difficult as you're beginning. And then with time, it becomes to a place where it constantly becomes part of you. And so I don't want to take a lot of your time to continue to make this so long, but I just want to kind of bring this to a wrap. I'm bringing it to an end. And I just want to give you a few things like homework that you can do for yourself as you think about this mindful eating. There is something that you can look out for. It's called mindfulness of hunger scale. And it's just rating from 1 to 10 when you have the food, starting to think about, when I'm eating this food, am I famished? Am I really, really starving, very, very hungry? That can be a 1. And am I overly full? That can be a 10. And then you begin to tell yourself, am I aware at this moment? Am I too hungry or not too full? Because you want to get to a point where you are satiated, you are satisfied, and not overly satisfied, or not very full, or not overly full. And in particular, when you're eating your dinner, you don't want to go to bed on a very full tummy. And so, what you want to do is you want to try and ensure that at the end of the day, you are allowing yourself that room. So, when you're lying down in your bed, you're kind of, in a way, not feeling maybe your tummy rumbling because it's telling you didn't have enough, or your tummy is just too heavy. You can't even move yourself around because you've just had a little bit too much. So one of the other final things that I want to leave you with as I bring this to a close, always think about mindful eating from a perspective or a way to remind yourself it's to pace it out and not to race. And so, just to give you 6 easy ways that will help you to eat slower. I'll repeat that again. 6 easy ways to make you eat slower. Number one, if you want to eat slower, you need to eat with your non dominant hand. What do I mean with that? So, I am dominantly right handed. If I'm eating constantly with my right hand, there are studies that have shown that you can end up eating more with a dominant hand compared to if you're eating with a non dominant hand. They actually show that you can actually reduce your consumption of food by up to 30%. When you're eating, try to use adjectives to describe the food you're about to eat. So, for example, I've got a bowl of popcorns here. I can start to describe them and say they are crunchy. I can start to describe them and say they are sweet, so that I'm saying I'm going to have sweet and crunchy popcorn or salty and crunchy popcorn before I even take a bite. So I'm in a way switching my mind on, because hopefully by now you realize there's a very strong connection between your eating, your emotions, and your eating. And those connection between your emotions and your eating actually make you can end up, and that's why people overeat, because if you are sometimes emotionally disengaged from the process, emotionally not there and sitting down with the food and thinking about it, in a sense, you can get to a point where you're not appreciating those tests, you're not appreciating the value at that moment, and that can make you to end up overeating. I've already mentioned the other thing, just sit down. As I said, we love to be on the go. I appreciate the world is moving at a very fast pace. And obviously, there's that temptation as a human being to want to rush and pace up with the world. But at the end of the day, remember you exist and you need to live and enjoy yourself, and don't allow the world to rush you as they're rushing into the things that they're doing. When you think, for example, if you're snacking, I mentioned yesterday, you can decide to do healthy snacking, but also just think about, instead of standing across your sink or where you put all those temptation foods, you might end up and sit down. And if you're lazy sometimes, which is okay, if you're watching TV, for example, you can say, oh, I don't feel like stopping in the middle of this series to wake up to go get another bowl of popcorn. Instead, I'm going to sit down and wait until I've finished watching this section. Then I can go and grab my popcorn. So at the end of the day, you're kind of delaying. And by delaying, you're kind of registering in your mind, am I really looking at that scale overly full at this stage, or am I still famished, or am I a little hungry, so that at the end of the day, probably I just need to drink water rather than snacking. So sit down when you're eating. Try again to stagger your bites with another activity. I found that kind of very interesting. So if you're eating, for example, with someone, you can kind of in a way eat, and then at the end of the day have a little bit like sip of water, or you can say ask somebody how is the food, just to kind of in a way give yourself that delay in between, so that the moment you're from one bite to the next bite, it gives you that opportunity to be able to enjoy the food. Then the other thing is you just observe. Notice how quickly and slowly other people around you are eating. When we are eating in my household, for example, we've got a chitty chatty one that will be just chatting and chatting through the way. And you're like, hey, it's dinner time. You need to stop it, and things like that. And whereas for me, I'm always thinking, like, well, I need to sit down. I need to finish my food within 10 minutes when I'm still feeling hungry. I don't want to start talking. By the time I'm finishing talking, the food will be cold. I'll not be feeling it. I will not be enjoying it. And when I finish eating, actually, that's what I just do. I finish eating and I sit down and start observing, and I'm saying, okay, why did you do that to your plate? Why did you draw? And then sometimes I'm actually just quiet because I don't want to be judgmental, but also I can't wait. I can't help but notice I'm human after all. And of course, also consider your fork or, or spoon, sorry, to be like a tool that you need to reload. So whenever you're looking at these, carefully and intentionally fill your fork slowly and deliberately. Be deliberate about how you're filling yourself up. Be deliberate about those tools that you're using, the fork and the spoons and everything, so that at the end of the day, you're allowing yourself to be able to eat all the food and enjoy those food that you're eating. So now to finish this, as I said, I don't want this to be too long. I just want to encourage you again. There's another plate that you can think about, which is called the mindful eating plate. I'll try to put it in the description box. And for those who are on Facebook, I'll try to put it in the guide so you can see that. And it just kind of, in a way, when you're looking at it, break your plate again into four. Now, I've given you so many plates. I told you about the Eat Well guide the other day, or my plate. And today is the mindful eating plate, where you're thinking about that portion of savor, that portion of observing, that portion of being in the moment, that portion of being not judgmental. And of course, the most important thing when it comes to mindful eating is just being aware, just being present when you are eating, just being there in the moment and not allowing yourself to be distracted or disrupted, no matter what it is, at the end of the day. So, to close off, I'll leave you with two things to always think about: the differences between dieting and mindful eating. So, dieting, it requires some willpower. You will need to tell yourself, girl, boy, I'm going to diet, I'm going to stop eating, I'm going to stop eating such and such a thing, I'm going to eat for how many days, blah, 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 blah. Dieting normally will require you to have rules. You set yourself rules and say, I'm not eating after 6 p.m. That's it. I'm done and dusted. Or I'm not eating meat. Or I'm not doing this. And most of the time, when people do dieting, they will be looking at things like weight loss, avoidance. They can be like deprivation, where, for example, if you're on a keto diet, you're depriving your body of carbohydrate. So you're depriving yourself of that energy so that you can have a different source of energy. There can be like counting of calories. I talked to you about calorie counting on day number 2. If you've forgotten about it, please check that out. There can be things like denial, when you're not seeing the weight shifting off and things like that. And they can be, you're looking at, sometimes people do quick fixes, which are accompanied with things like guilt. And dieting most of the time is on a short time. And you can end up, when you finish the dieting, fighting for food. And that's why fad diets usually are like, they're called the yo-yo, because today you lose weight, tomorrow you're back in. Tomorrow you use the other day you lose weight, the other day you're back on. It's kind of like on a roller coaster. But when it comes to mindful eating, because it's not a diet, it's just a way of, it's a lifestyle kind of. You're allowing yourself to kind of come to a point where you understand the food you're eating. You're conscious about what you're eating, rather than using willpower, is more consciousness. You're listening to internal signals. We were created with senses so that we can sense things like our food. As I said, you can sense the smell, the taste, the texture, all those, using those five senses, the tactile, or etc., so that at the end of the day, you are able to have those internal signals and cues that will help you to be able to understand and, of course, to sense when you're full. It is more empowerment. So when you're trying to do mindful eating, one, of course, is kind of, as I said, it kind of in a way also builds good, meaningful relationships. Imagine if you're out on a date with someone, even if it can be a family, and then each one of you is on the phone. I'm looking at Twitter, what is being said on Twitter. Somebody else is on Facebook, another one is on Instagram. And then eventually it can actually even ruin the mood of you guys going out. And then it kind of, in a way, usually ask myself, what's the point? Why did we not just stay in the house? And then we stay on the gadgets. And we are a society where, kind of in a way, we are kind of allowing ourselves to be so much controlled with our phones, when in a sense you can actually decide and say, you know what, I'm going to switch off my phone, and then I can sit down and concentrate on the food, concentrate on my relationship that I have right here, right now. If my little one is eating, I can sit down with him, see him eating and enjoying his food. And in the way, it's more empowerment. It's more to do with health rather than weight. You're kind of in a way wanting to have a better health outcome. There is more acceptance, there is more flexibility. You're looking at nutrition, as I said, being very simple and being very clear about where do you keep all your temptations. So you're taking the temptations away from sight. You're not kind of hiding in a way in the cupboards all the cookies, the sweets. If you cannot do without them, of course, we have children, and sometimes you may just want to have things for maybe visitors and things like that. And then, like, kind of littering around those healthy options that you have. Of course, also it gives you permission to be you and to enjoy the flavor. It's a long term approach, it's a lifestyle thing, and it's a way that you will begin to enjoy the flavors. And to be honest, I've tried this so many times. The difference between when I am mindful with my eating, when I can feel myself breaking down the bites and things like that, is way much more better and much more different. So hopefully, if you picked up anything, I can see a few people online. Just drop it in the chat. Tell me what was your key thing that you learned and picked up from today, and then I'll let you guys go and have a great evening. So now the teacher mode is on. Tell me in the chat, what is it that you picked up today in the session that we've done on mindfulness for those who are online as we are speaking now? I think I'll continue with the chats later on because obviously I want to end this before it gets too long. I don't want to get here to an hour. Once again, thank you so much for all of you who've joined online and those live. Sorry for those of you. All right, there are some comments coming in. I have picked up a couple of things. Eating to feel the taste of your food. That's amazing. Yeah, if you really want to do that, it's a very good way of just kind of in a way. Again, I said things like taste, but also you can connect food with things like events and things like that. So at the end of the day, you're not just eating for the sake of it, but you are eating to enjoy every single bite. It's been an absolute pleasure having you all today. Hopefully, you've learned something. Today has been day 4 of the 7 days of step challenge. Thank you for those of you who are joining, those of you who are telling me how you're benefiting from these. I will let you go. And tomorrow will be day number 5. When I come on, I've got another different topic that tomorrow I will be looking at, mainly how to build a healthy regimen. So if you are kind of in a way desiring to know how to start, maybe you're feeling overwhelmed with this whole health journey and you want a little bit of help with starting it, I'm going to be breaking down using myself and other people as examples, and then trying kind of in a way to establish some regimes that hopefully you can be able to stick on after Sunday when this challenge comes to an end. As always, I told you, it's my desire that you can prosper and be in good health, and health is wealth. And once you look after your wealth, you can look after your well-being, and of course you can be able to be well and wise as you make wise choices to enhance and improve your life and your lifestyle. Until next time, have a great evening, and I shall see you all tomorrow. Bye bye.